Welcome to the Best Games You Never Played podcast.
Your only podcast that talks about the best games that sold under 1 million copies. I'm Nick.
And I'm Chris.
And today we got a game that I picked out that I'm super excited to talk about.
Yeah, it's a little bit on the weird side, but it is pretty fun, and there's definitely nothing like it.
So stay tuned.
So, Nick, what are we talking about this week?
Oh man, we're talking about just a straight up classic in my eyes. This game is called We Love Katimari. It is the sequel to the cult hit Katamari Damacy for PlayStation 2.
Mm-hmm. And then that was made by Kieta Takayashi. Is that how you pronounce that?
Kaita, I believe his name is Kaita Takahashi.
All right,
he was the lead developer of the series. But to understand the series a little bit, we kind of got to go back before the series was even started.
Okay.
So he enrolled in the Musashino Art University to study sculpting back in 1995. But during this time, he had a philosophy for his art. He believed that his art should combine practical elements along with whimsical humor. And that definitely shows later in his life when he made the game.
Yeah, it definitely can reflect on how the game is presented as far as the art style goes. And then it says here around 1999, he no longer wanted to pursue sculpting because he saw great potentials in games.
Yeah, definitely. He did try to come up with a lot of ideas. He worked with a lot of small developers to make games that fit his vision.
So is there any games in particular he worked on before Katamari that are kind of notable?
There was a game called Action Drive, which is very similar to Crazy Taxi back in the day.
Oh, love me some Crazy Taxi.
Yeah. And the characters that he designed for that game were the basis of the main characters in the Katamari series. He came up with the king, the queen, and the prince of the cosmos.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Basically, in that game, it's very similar to Crazy Taxi, except the characters all had like hammers on the sides of their head, and they would use it to hit ongoing cars. And that's why in Katamari they have big, long sledgehammer heads.
Oh, okay. And then it says here, Takayashi got the idea for Katamari Damacy from a game played in Japanese schools where students tried to push a giant ball into a goal.
Yeah, there's a big long name for it that I couldn't even try to pronounce.
Oh, okay.
But I wish we had that game as a kid. I would have loved that.
It sounds pretty fun. It makes me think of those hamster ball things that people go into and play soccer with. Almost that kind of thing, but maybe a little bit different. It sounds like it'd be a lot of fun.
In 2001, he was pitching this idea that he had based off of the inspiration that he got from that school game. And he talked to some of his friends that worked in Namco at the time.
Okay. Namco's a pretty big developer for sure.
Yeah. And they were going down a route that Konami was also going down, where they were making schools for game design.
Okay.
And they told him to either enroll or find some students to help him make a prototype. And that's what he did. He got a team of 10 senior students working in game design. And they made a prototype for Katamari Damacy, which was the first game.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Did they go on to be a part of the official team, or?
I'm not entirely sure on that one. A lot of the details about the development team are scarce.
Oh, okay. Doesn't sound super surprising to me, because this seems more like a pet project more so than really any of the other games we've talked about on this podcast.
Yeah. And then a few years later, after a few years of development, the game officially came out in Japan on March 18th, 2004, and in North America on September 21st, 2004.
Mm-hmm. And then this one was like a surprise hit, the original Katamari. The original one actually did sell over 1 million copies back when it first came out, which was something that did certainly surprise the developers of the game. They thought it would be kind of a niche, cult classic, kind of small game, for sure.
Yeah, which the second one was. So after a few months of looking at the critical reception of the game, not just critical reception, but fan reception also, they were just blown away by the positive response they got. So they immediately started working on a second game. The second game had the same engine, used a lot of elements from the first game, including like half the soundtrack.
Yeah, I've beaten the original one, and obviously I played this one as well. And I noticed that a lot of the soundtrack is either just the same thing remixed or just the same thing in general. But, I mean, with that quick turnaround and kind of reusing assets, let them release the game in Japan July 16th, 2005, and September 20th, 2005 in North America. So, I mean, you know, it might be kind of a negative that they reused some things, but it did make them, or let them release a sequel within almost a year, exactly. So that's pretty impressive.
It's kind of similar how nowadays Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed and all these type of games, they come out every year by reusing the same engine. So back then that wasn't happening all the time like it is nowadays.
Yeah, so I guess in that way you can say this game was kind of innovative, but maybe not for the best thing, you know.
Now, when we talk about that year-long cycle, do you think that had anything to do with the sales? Because the game only sold 520,000 copies worldwide.
And that's almost a million drop from the original. So I would say that maybe, or actually, I would say definitely yes, because for this type of game, and it being so similar to the original, I could see people seeing this and looking at the back of the box and that kind of stuff and being like, oh, well, I already played this game. Why do I want to get it again? Obviously, there's some really big fans of the Katamari series, but it's not like the biggest series in the world, even though the first one was very successful. It's not like Call of Duty or you know, Battlefield, anything like that, where millions are like, oh, let's go get this game. It's kind of see it in passing thing and like, oh, I'll pick this up, try it out. But since they already had that experience and that initial like shock factor was gone, I feel like it did kind of hurt their sales as far as just people maybe not wanting to play a new one so soon.
Even though the sales weren't as good, this was one of the best reviewed games that we've talked about.
I think it might be the best, actually.
On game rankings, it has a 86.65%. Metacritic has an 86% for the critics and 88 for the fans, which is the highest fan review I think we've had.
I think so, yeah.
IGN gave it an 8 out of 10. G4 TV gave it a 4 out of 5.
And when we were looking through the whole list of like critics, 90% of them were probably, you know, 80 to 90% on the rankings. So that's really high. So it did garner a lot of good reception. But again, like I said, I just think that making it so soon might have hurt the overall sales of the game for sure.
Yeah.
Because it is better than the first one from what I've played.
And when you have such a short time in between the games, you know, you got to think about how you're going to advertise the game.
That's true.
I don't really remember any advertisements for this.
Yeah, I don't either. And it came out right whenever I was first really getting into gaming. So I'm sure I would have seen something on there. Plus, you got to think as well, even though it's almost a full year from the initial release of the first game, you got to think of, I bet you with the first Katamari, the sales initially weren't the best, but then word of mouth kind of and reviews kind of spread it. So it was probably even less than a year turnaround for a lot of people that got into it.
Like, honestly, that's how I heard about the games in general, just because I knew a friend that knew of the games.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the niche culture around it also, you know, intensified that turnaround, because like I said just now, you know, probably most people weren't lining up day one to get this game. It probably was a few months after it came out, if not longer, before they got the first one.
So, of course, critics and fans loved it. So I want to ask you something.
Go ahead.
What did you think of the story?
The story was interesting because, if I'm not mistaken, because it's a little, like, for Katamari stories, it's a little hard to follow for some parts because it's so kind of wacky and weird. But if I'm not mistaken, it follows the success of the first game and how the King of the Cosmos is surprised at how popular they got in the game world. and trying to help people out, and everyone loves them now
Yeah.
and that kind of thing.
He wants to grant the wishes of his fans.
Yeah, which is really, really funny. This game, if this game has one thing going for it, it's definitely the humor.
Yeah, the writing's really good.
Yeah, for sure. And for this kind of game, I could imagine it would be hard to translate it from, the Japanese original intention to a North American, something that makes sense to North Americans, but they did a really good job, the translation team.
Like, I wouldn't even notice that it was written by a Japanese man.
Yeah.
You know, I thought the translation was really well done, but there's another part of the story of the game.
Okay.
It's about the origin of the King of the Cosmos.
Oh, that was who he was, the little guy, like
Yeah.
boxing and stuff?
Yeah. So, once you play a few levels, you'll get a cutscene in between all the levels, going through the origin of the King of the Cosmos, going from childhood to where he is now.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was him. I'm not sure if it directly says it is, but I just kind of missed that part. But I thought they were pretty funny cutscenes as well. I got through like the first 5 or 6 of them, I think, because I played like the first 3 or 4 hours of the game, which they are very entertaining and kind of keep you wanting to play more. I also do like the fact that you can collect more Katamari, or is that what they're called? Katamari? Cousins, okay.
Yeah.
More cousins in the game, because I think it adds kind of a replay value to it, because like, even though I want to play as the prince 9 out of 10 times, just because he's such an iconic character to the series, it is pretty fun to maybe sometimes try out some other ones, and the other ones do look very different and have unique designs for sure.
Now, speaking of unique designs, this entire series is just built on unique designs.
Oh yeah.
So, what do you think about the characters having these big sledgehammer heads and the whole like childish appeal to the game?
It's very, very different. I do really like the art style, but another part of me doesn't like certain things. Like, I love the character designs of the main characters and all that, especially the King of the Cosmos, because he's like so
big buff dude.
Yeah, he's so creepy and weird with his face, and then like the body doesn't match at all. But and it's really funny to look at, and that's a great design. But like the world and kind of the people and all that stuff, and the animals and all the objects, like it adds to the humor because they're kind of like cardboard cutouts.
Yeah,
of that
they're
stuff.
big like cardboard boxes.
Yeah, pretty much. But I just think, they might have been able to enhance that a little bit. I'm not saying it needs to look super realistic, because that wouldn't fit the art style at all. But I just think making them less generic and a little bit more interesting, I would prefer. But I get what they're going for, kind of. I don't know if avant-garde is the right word, but it feels like avant-garde is the right word, where it's like kind of ironically bad kind of thing. You know what I mean?
So you said avant-garde. The music, it's very weird, but it's very good.
Yeah, a lot of the music is just like some guy kind of beatboxing a little bit, and then saying either Japanese gibberish, what it sounds like. They could be saying words, but it sounds like Japanese gibberish. And then, either that or Katamari Damacy, but in like a singy kind of way.
And like a swing.
Yeah, like Katamari Damacy.
There's a remix of the theme from the first game in like a big band swing style that I really like.
Is that later on in the game?
Yeah, and it also plays during the intro.
Oh, okay. So I did catch that. Yeah, I like this. Out of all the songs I heard, I think the tutorial level song is actually my favorite one. It's a little bit weird, but it was quite enjoyable. But overall, I think the soundtrack does fit the theming of the game a lot.
Yeah, and each level has a song designed for that level.
Yeah, and it definitely fits pretty well. Like the water levels sounded like a water level kind of theme. I did enjoy the music quite a bit, actually.
Like there's a level that is nothing but flowers. And it has a really nice, relaxing song.
Yeah, that was an interesting level. I like that one a lot, actually. But yeah, what do you think of the gameplay of this game?
Oh, the gameplay. It's so unique, and I've never seen something like it before, and I love it.
Yeah, no, there's really nothing like this game that has come before or after it. Because just that like momentum of rolling everything up into a ball. At first it's like, oh come on, I want to be able to roll up everything, but then you kind of get your ball a little bit bigger and bigger, and you get to be able to unlock or I guess roll up more and more larger things, and just it's a continuous addition to it. And that's what I think is so addictive about the gameplay is like, oh, I can just get this thing bigger and bigger and take more and more people and more houses and stuff like that. Which, you know, the only game that might have a similar concept is that Donut County game, but that's the opposite, where it's like you're a hole in the ground and the hole gets bigger as you inhale more things.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's nearly as satisfying as being able to actually roll up a ball and just get ginormous.
It's a very simple game to pick up too. You just only really need the two joysticks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is probably one of the games I would probably recommend for people not really into games to try them out, you know, just because of the gameplay so satisfying. It's a little bit weird, but I think that some people would really find it a lot of fun, especially if they aren't into games particularly. But, and, you know, being able to roll up galaxies, literal galaxies, at the end of the game is really interesting.
Yeah, levels where you can start at like a meter tall and then go up to be, 500,000 meters.
Yeah.
And then go up to like, 500 kilometers, stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's
I don't know my meters, by the way, my metrics.
Yeah, no, we're American here. But yeah, that's the general goal, is either you're trying to get the biggest Katamari possible or collect a certain amount of things. So like that flower level, you were trying to go for mostly just as much flowers as possible.
And I would also say that the difficulty spike is very generous.
Yeah.
It starts out super easy, but then once you get to the end, you get harder tasks. Like you got to get it to be a certain size in only like 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And if you go over on some of them, actually, it kind of penalizes you, at least in the first one. I'm pretty sure they brought it back for the second one as well, correct?
Once you reach your goal, you can just keep going. You won't get penalized.
Oh, okay.
But if you don't reach your goal, then the king gets very mad.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that before when I played the first one. It's pretty hilarious to see it, just how angry he gets. It's like, you fool. That kind of stuff. But, yeah. What do you think of some of the game modes? Because I know this one added some versus the first game.
Yeah, this game had two new modes. One was a battle mode, where you basically fight against one of your friends.
Okay.
To try to collect the most stuff in a level. The bigger Katamari wins.
Are they separate? Because I never played any of the modes.
It's split
like
screen.
Split screen, but it's like, are you on separate courses or can you interact with each other?
Yeah,
as well?
you can interact with each other. You're in the same area.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then there's a co-op mode, which is also multiplayer, where you're on one screen, and you have two controllers, and one person you have two characters pushing the Katamari at once, and you got to work together to move it in whatever direction you want to.
Oh, wow, that feels like it could be a lot of headaches.
Oh yeah, it's frustrating, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I could imagine. Now, this game is kind of like stuck on the PS2 right now. They've never re-released it digitally or physically on any other console. And, like, it's not the rarest game in the world, but it is kind of a little bit sought after because the fans do like it, and the copies are limited as far as, like, what's available, sold on eBay a lot, that kind of thing.
And this is actually the last Katamari game that Takahashi would ever work on.
Oh, really? Wasn't aware of that.
He left the series after this game.
Yeah, I think the series is up to 5 or 6 of them now.
Yeah, there was one on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360.
Yeah, PS Vita.
PS Vita. There was one on the phones. There was one that the first one actually just got re-released.
Yeah, that's the one
Switch.
I played. So with the first game being re-released not that long ago, do you think that this game might have a chance of getting a re-release as well?
I sure hope so. The first one got re-released and it did pretty well. I would say so. Especially on Switch. That would be my preferred platform to play it on.
Oh yeah, I love ports to Switch for any game.
Especially since it's portable. You've been seeing a lot of re-releases of old games like Super Monkey Ball, Banana Blitz just came out. And that game's a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I definitely need to pick that one up as well. Too many games.
But I would definitely love to see a We Love Katimari re-release on modern consoles. Maybe add, some bonus stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the original remake added anything to it or not, but I think it did. probably did, but it doesn't really matter. I do agree. I hope it does get re-released because it seems like a pretty fun game. I own some of the other games in the series, like the I own the one on the PS3 and the Vita.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah,
not the Vita one, but
the PS3 one.
Yeah,
I haven't really played them, so I do have a bit of the series I could get into as far as like, to bide my time and kind of wait for it. But I do think it would be pretty fun to give this one a try as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Mr. Sunshine.
So, Nick, after all that, what do you think your overall opinions of the game are?
My opinions have not changed since I played it for the first time. I love this game. I will continue to sing its praises forever and ever. I will always recommend it to people, and I will always realize that I will get a weird look whenever I recommend it to them.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. I don't think I am as big a fan of the game or the series as you are, but I still think it's a great game and definitely would recommend it to people that are kind of like maybe in a little bit of a rut with their games and it's like, oh, every game feels the same, you know. This game certainly is not that.
It's definitely a good game that you can pick up and play for, 30 minutes to an hour and have a good time.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that would make a great
Easily.
Switch port for sure. But I would recommend it, especially if you want to kind of restart your system as far as your gaming life kind of thing. Give you a little fresh feeling.
I like to call it my palate cleanser. If I ever go on a binge of playing, these super realistic, very violent games, playing some Call of Duty, God of War, stuff like that, I go back and play Katamari.
Oh, yeah.
Make me feel better.
This game is definitely perfect for that. So either way, really good game. But that's pretty much all we have for this week. But thank you for listening to episode 4 of the Best Games You Never Played podcast. Next week, we have a little something special for you. We'll be covering our favorite games of the decade.
Yeah, we got a special coming up. It should be good. We got a big list of games to talk about.
Oh, yeah. It'll be a long one, so make sure to tune in.
I've had a lot of fun doing this. How about you?
Oh, yeah. It's been a fun time.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. I am Nick.
I'm Chris.
And thank you for listening to the Greatest Games You Never Played podcast.
Have a good one.